Hi, everybody. I'm Lolly Lewis, and I'm here with Bonnie Hampton, who's going to be playing the fourth of Bach's cello suites on April 5th on our series. And I hope you'll be joining us. Bonnie, I'm so excited to
Good to
look forward
be
to
with you,
working with
Lolly.
you on
Good to
this.
be with you.
One thing that's always really been captivating about this music is how it just is so primary. It feels, even for somebody like me who's not a player, but just a listener, it just grabs you instantly and in a very physical way.
Mhm.
And and I'm exploring that with folks and just wondering, as you've had such a journey with this music,
Well,
you know, what is its essential nature that gives it that power? Do you have a sense
well,
of that?
well, it's Bach, it's Bach's music. Uh, and what's interesting is the evolution of these suites, because it wasn't always that case. That people do respond to them, and they are responding to them now when cellists come around and play them, or a series like yours and so on. Absolutely is, but it was not always that way. There's sort of a history behind it. At the beginning, uh, the movements were just played as individual movements, perhaps now and then, but they were hardly even thought of as concert pieces. And it may be the same to some degree for the violin partitas and sonatas, although violin was much more of a concert instrument, and of course the keyboard pieces of Bach were played and studied, and that's how I started my journey with Bach. Was I started having piano lessons when I was 4, and loved the little Bach pieces from the Anna Magdalena notebook that my teacher gave me. I especially was became attached to it very early, at that very early age. So that as far as my own connection with the Bach suites, cello suites, was I started. My mother was an amateur violinist, and so she would get music records, of course it was 78s in those days. And so that I started the cello, having lessons on the cello. I wanted to be able to play with other people, so that's why I wanted to start the cello. And so I had heard Pablo Casal's recordings of the Bach suites even before I could play the cello. And it was probably must have been at least a year before I was able to start uh, studying them myself. But that was a big thrill when I got to start working on that first prelude of the first suite. That was a big day in my life,
Wow.
It was really a big day. But you see, Casals, he found those suites in somewhere in a music shop in Barcelona as a young student himself. He was looking around at music and found them and thought that was wonderful. And he started studying them, and he studied them, I think, over 12 years, I think it was, before he would think of playing them in public,
Wow.
because they were not considered to be concert pieces in those days. And But after that period, he would play an entire suite on a concert, on a recital program, and violinists were already doing that. Chrysler and some of the other violinists of that, they were already. You can see their programs in historic places. They were already, but it was not usual for the cello, but that was this beginning where the suite started to be. And I don't think it happened overnight at all. I think it was, in fact, I have a feeling that it's much more recent, the evolution of people playing the suites in public, the cello suites a whole lot in public. It started, I remember in the 60s when some cellists were beginning to play all of them, on a concert as a kind of tour de force and that kind of thing. And I remember it would have been in the 90s when Yo-Yo played them at Tanglewood in one of the summer concerts there. And of course, that's a very big audience where there's a hall full of people. But as things are at Tanglewood, there were many people out on the lawns around having their supper, but listening to Bach and listening to the suites. And of course, they wouldn't have gone I mean, they were going to hear Yo-Yo because he already had a, very
Yeah.
popular reputation. And I just loved that because I loved the fact that here were people that probably out of their choice, they were going for a weekend out with a nice supper and a nice concert and that kind of thing. And they weren't necessarily going to hear Bach cello suites. But in fact, they started hearing Bach cello suites. And now, of course, many people do bring the whole cycle and play them as such. So it's been an evolution. It's also part of this time. I think, in a sense, it was in the 20th century that the cello began to be uh, recognized much. It became, as far as cellists feel, I think it was the 20th century when it became the cello century. In other words, that we started to be people much more recognized as being other than support instruments in chamber music or orchestra. So there had always been some exceptional wonderful soloists and so on, but I think that the popularity of the cello, I mean, and I must say, at recitals and concerts, I've had people come and say, oh, the cello is my favorite instrument. But the reality is the box office is always much better for piano or violin or so, so when they take cello to their hearts, but that's not as much as far as the as far as the public concerts. But that's a whole nother thing. The main thing, and I'm getting off the track, because the main thing, it's the same thing. I remember hearing Segovia on the guitar at the Opera House. And the guitar also, a single instrument in a very 3,000 seat hall. But there's something about that, you see, that the one person, the audience goes to that person and is attracted to it. And I have to say, I've had that experience in myself when I've played Bach suites. Uh, it's rather scary for a cellist because there you are. There's a hall with just a single piano, just a single chair. You don't have a piano or other instruments for partners and other people to play with. You just a single chair, and you walk out and you sit there and you play this individual piece. But what's very interesting is I've had some of the most exceptional experiences as a performer because there's something about the concentration of a single person playing in that way uh, that brings the concert everybody. It brings everyone in. It brings things into the music itself. In fact, I had a rather terrifying experience. Well, I'm overstating. It wasn't terrifying, but it was in Japan. I was playing actually it was called the Casals Hall in
Wow.
Tokyo, and I was playing a Bach suite, and I was playing with my eyes closed, and then all of a sudden I realized it was so quiet. It was so quiet there. I wonder if they've all left, because I couldn't hear a sound, and I didn't dare open my eyes.
Right.
They had already left, and to break my own concentration. That was the thought. I mean, I wasn't serious, really worried, but it passed. Just that sense, and that is the concentration that
Yeah.
music brings, and I think that's it's a really that's what a real live performance experience can bring, which is just not quite as wonderful as recordings and all that kind of thing we have, and thank goodness for them, especially during this time. But uh, uh, but there's something about the live performance experience that can have qualities that one doesn't have in other ways.
Oh, I completely agree. I really do. And
Yeah,
and I think that one of the things that we're hoping to get at is similarly that our listening experience, partly because of recording and partly because of a lot of cultural stuff, has been that listening is very much objective. Like, I'm the listener, you're the player,
yeah,
and we're having different experiences.
right.
And one of the wonderful things about live performance is it's not different experiences. It's
No,
a resonant experience that we're having together,
That's
even
right.
though you're the one playing and I'm the one listening,
Yeah,
it's very dynamic
that's
for
right.
the listener too. And I think that's something that I hope our process of inviting people to hear a little bit about your process and about your love of the music will kind of encourage them to have personal listening experiences that are dynamic and imaginative in that way.
No, it's that's very good, and I think it's exactly right. And the fact that there will be conversation, and we will share whatever point of view we want to bring to our particular uh, day, with the suites. I feel, and there will be cellists. I will be speaking about, mainly I'll be speaking about the music itself, but also some cellistic things I will speak, because I know there'll be probably many, if amateur musicians, will lovers of music playing various instruments, but there will be hopefully some cellists.
Oh, for sure.
And so that aspect, and as a cellist myself, I think I have this sort of feeling, if there's one thing, as a cellist, that I want to be able to achieve in my life, it's the real sense of having these works, being able to play these works as well as I can, because they sort of symbolize something that is so pure, musically, for the cello. And that's also something that I feel I really encourage people to, players of all ages, uh, to play the suites, because there's so many of the movements that are very accessible, no matter what level one is. And the thing is, I feel for everybody that does try to play an instrument themselves, I feel that once one has had the experience of playing the instrument, no matter how far it goes or not, you have a different relationship to music. So I really encourage that too, because it's just part of the uh, part of the whole experience of music. And I at my here I am in my 80s, and I've had my whole life at music from the age of before 4, because I was listening to music before that. So it's been, and I just feel so fortunate, so lucky to have music in my life. Because life brings so many things, but this is something, and having music isn't always easy, especially as a profession. But just the same, it makes sense to me, and I just feel, in retrospect, looking back at the quality of my life, I feel so lucky in that sense. And
That's
Bach is,
wonderful.
Bach is our granddaddy. What can we say? And I think, to answer your first question, as you started off, uh, I think, what is it that brings? Well, I think it's Bach. He that's the quality of his music. I mean, because he expressed everything. It was in the language of his day, but it has all of the passion, all of the that whole Baroque, flamboyance. It has all the passion, all the love, all the everything. And also the style, and of course the spiritual and the religious and spiritual side of things, but also just everything. It was just a very complete uh, musician, and I'm sure human being, in that sense. So we're lucky to have him, and I'm so glad that some of the because so much of his music was lost. In fact, the original manuscript of the cello suites we don't have, but
Isn't that incredible?
yeah. Well, because in the day he was just another musician, trying to make a living,
Right. Exactly.
feed all
Exactly.
those feed all those kids, and so on.
So,
Yeah.
Bonnie, talking about your career and sort of that sense of lineage is really a wonderful thing. And in music, I think there's a wonderful tradition of lineage as far as who you've worked with and how the past sort of travels through
Well,
musicians. And you even worked with Pablo Casals, didn't you?
yes, yes, I did, and so I. got certainly the experience of his complete devotion, well, to music per
Yes.
se, but also especially the Bach suites, because he felt that he was the first to do them, to one of the probably the first to record them in total, and it was just and it was an ongoing process. I asked him whether he had ever thought about making an edition of it, of the suites. He said no, because he was constantly living with them, growing with them, changing. The basic musical intention was the same. The basic uh, 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 harmonic phrasing, contrapuntal phrasing, all those things. But the actual details, he would change things, And also, he came from a period where it was the older editions, and one knows what edition it was that he found in that it was, I think, the Grootsbacher edition that he found in that store in Barcelona. And of course, in those days, the cellist slurred, changed bowings, edited things, and slurred a great deal because, yes, many of the phrases are linear and so on. But now we've gotten more text in this day and age,
Yes.
and they're much more separate. And the point is, it was in the '60s that I got a wonderful New York bow maker, William Salco, to make me a Baroque bow, and that's when I got started, because it's able to make what I call a singing détaché, where you can get a really legato kind of separate bow, and I call it a singing détaché, yes, because the notes can connect, so that you can have this very legato phrases, and yet you have the articulation of separate bows. And it's different from our modern bow, which has more bite and more articulation outside it. It still can have the clarity at the same time it sings, and has more of an overtone resonance too. So it changed. The problem, and it's gotten very popular because we're all gotten very urtext and all that kind of thing. But the problem is now the kids are, and there are a lot of bow makers that are making Baroque bows, which is good, I think, because if we allow ourselves to be taught by the bow, so to speak. But a
Yes.
lot of kids, what they're doing is taking a Baroque bow and just using it like a modern bow. And
Right.
that's the wrong way around. I think that one needs to let the Baroque bow teach one the technique, which is quite different. It's not quite different, but there are some balance changes. You use different parts of the bow more, and you can get this very singing détaché, and then of course the slurs and all the different points, which make a difference to the phrasing. It's true. And Casals himself changed after some of the more urtext editions. He changed some of his thing, but he did not feel that he had to be bound by every single detail, especially since we didn't have the original. He
Yes.
went for the musical understanding of the um, of the pieces, and then that was his thinking of it. Actually, Bach also, people want to play Bach, and I remember hearing years and years ago a student at the university here in Berkeley, um, on the tuba, playing the fourth suite, which I'm going to be playing. It's in chords, and so bo 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 bo, and so on, like that. And then
With the tuba.
because he had to take a breath, and there's no place to take a breath. Well,
Really.
the point is, and I remember another time the Swingle Singers. That was something in the '60s or '70s. This French group that did jazz syllables,
Sure.
to Bach, and but with the jazz, which I don't remember what they were, but they were very good. There was a very good. Well, the point is, my point with all of this is, Bach will survive. He can stand everybody wanting to do their own thing to it, and so on. And so but it just shows the attraction, of the genre and the music. So
And it's just,
we all love it, and we all want to
yes,
be part of it.
yes, and it really is living tradition. It's not in a glass case in a
Oh, no,
museum. It's
no,
ours to experience.
it's right.
I'm so excited about having our session together on,
Well,
this is April 5th.
it was a really good idea, you
Oh,
know.
thank you,
When
Bonnie.
does it start? Fairly soon. What is the
Yes,
starting?
it starts on March 8th with
Uh-huh,
Oliver Herbert.
good.
And
Yeah,
then we have 6 sessions, and yours is on April 5th
right. Yeah.
with the
Okay.
fourth suite. Can't
Okay.
wait.
All right. Good to see you again,
Thank
Lolly.
you so
Yeah.
much, Bonnie.
All right.
Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Mhm. Bye-bye.